Okay.
Okay, the screen is back now, but I have to, like, it doesn't, like, people will have to go back and find the address.
It might, yeah. Like, anybody who's on our YouTube channel should see it.
No, I didn't.
Oh.
It was gone. The whole channel shut down.
Oh, no.
Check.
No audio. Yeah.
Nothing.
What happened? It ended. Yeah.
On laptop then.
So.
I guess worst case scenario, we can just record it all. But
Well, we're running into some.
Live stream.
oh, something's happening on your laptop too.
Okay,
No,
so
showing it's going to old YouTube videos.
Oh, okay.
if people click on the link
Yeah.
in our website, it will take them to our live broadcast.
Okay.
It should still.
But not on the Twitter account.
Try to fix it.
Yeah, I think so.
So welcome to this for your patients. We're testing our microphone here. So in OBS, have you selected the appropriate?
Yeah.
The microphone into the.
No, we're not even feed.
So. Sorry, I just had to think through the best solution here.
Okay, so if we do change the link, Joe, we might put the new link into the chat.
I can't have access to that.
Oh.
If I can, that'd be great. But they can't. People can't see the chat now. It's gone.
Okay.
That's where we're.
Got it. So we shut it down and now we're restarting.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, so this is live. This is the link. Yeah, so this is
A new link?
No.
And that live stream is working?
Okay, let me go to live stream.
That live stream. Hello, everybody. Hello. Welcome to the Sugarbush. My name is Nathan. We're doing a video and sound test. We apologize for the technical difficulties. This happens sometimes. I'm getting a thumbs up. Do we have audio and video? Fantastic. Thank you so much for your patience. We're going to get started. I'm going to invite our tech team, cameraman Dave Pope, and live streamer Levi Moore. We're going to go for a little walk. Welcome. Fantastic. Now, before we get started, I know that we had to restart the live stream in order to get this working. So I just want to check with the technical team if there's a new link for our viewers. The same link. All right, good. So hopefully everybody who is seeing the live stream working, you are now viewing this live, and we're really excited to be here. My name is Nathan Manty, or Nathan Nate. I'm an outdoor educator here at the Waterloo Regional District School Board, and I'm a settler on this land, and I want to acknowledge that we are doing this live stream event from the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Ute people. I'm here with my good friend Garrison. We had the good fortune of working together at Blair Outdoor Education Center for about a year.
Bonjour everyone. My name is Garrison Cleary. I'm a professor of Indigenous Studies at Conestoga College now, even though I had an awesome time working with Nathan. I've moved over to the college, and I'm really excited to be here today. It's a beautiful day, and the sap is starting to run, so we're really excited. We're grateful that we are on this land, this territory. This land is here to teach us and to inform us and to allow us to learn and come into relationship with the maple. We're right now in a wonderful time of the year. This is the sugar moon, and we are coming into relationship with that maple tree. We're coming to learn what it means to harvest some of that sap, what it means to do a lot of work and have something hopefully really sweet again. So I'm looking forward to traveling with you, but I just want to give gratitude and thanks to all these animals, these plants, to the sky, to the earth here on the journey that we're going to take together today.
So we are coming to you live from the White Owl Native Ancestry Association, Sugarbush in Kitchener, Ontario. And I just want to let you know we are observing all COVID protocols. So we're distancing 2 meters, and everyone who's not on camera will be wearing a mask and safety goggles. I also want to say thank you so much to outdoor educator Al Woodhouse and the Indigenous Learning Team at the Waterloo Region District School Board, who are moderating the chat right now. We're really happy to be able to have that live chat function, and they will be able to answer any of your questions that you might have about maple syrup or about Indigenous people. So I'm really excited to get started.
Does that sound, Nathan?
Is that a woodpecker?
I don't know.
That doesn't sound like a woodpecker.
A little bit larger than a woodpecker.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Dave.
Putting this tap in, I put the tail on now. I'm putting a lid on. And this is something that our ancestors have done for thousands of years. We've been out in sugar bushes like this, not necessarily with tails, but we'll get to later. This is how we're doing it today here in the White Owl Sugar Bush. White Owl is an Indigenous organization here in the Waterloo region to us from the United Church of Canada, and so we're very thankful from the system on this maple, delicious.
Amazing. And maybe you can tell our viewers a little bit about who you are.
Yeah. My name's Dave Skeen. I work for White Owl Native Ancestry, and I'm Métis. My family comes from, my Indigenous Métis family comes from Lesser Slave Lake, Alberta, and then they moved to Red River area, Manitoba, and eventually to Pennsylvania. And then I live here now in Kitchener.
So I think pretty soon we're going to learn about how to tap a tree, but I'm wondering if there's anything that you want to share about your practice when it comes to tapping maple.
Yeah, like for us, Nathan and Garrison both, when they came in and introduced themselves, they talked about being thankful. And for us, thankfulness is a very significant part of how we understand our role in the world. And we don't want to just take from these maple trees. We don't want to just take their delicious sap and turn it into even more delicious syrup. We want to really appreciate the process by appreciating the maple tree itself. And so whenever we believe that when we take something or we receive something as a gift, we also return something as a gift. So over here we have Serena, who's just about to tap a tree, and I will put down some ba, which is how we say it in Michif, our language, this plant that we use for reciprocity. So I'm just going to take a little bit of pinch of that and thank the maple tree. Thank you, maple tree, for your delicious sap.
Thank you, Dave. Conte, everybody. Hello. My name is Serena Pertrack, and I'm a land-based education coordinator with White Owl Native Ancestry. I'm also a Métis person with Irish and Ukrainian ancestry. And this is my first sugaring season, but it doesn't take long to learn very quickly in the sugar bush how to make maple syrup. And the first step to do that is tapping the maple tree. And so we paid our thanks to our friend the maple, and we are now going to tap the tree so that we can insert a spout and get some nice sap out of the water. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my drill bit. up against the tree, and I'm going to angle a little bit upward. And here we go. Now I do it a couple times just to make sure that there's no debris in the way so that I can very easily put the spout in. So, got our spout here, and you can see that the tree is already dripping. I'm going to use my hammer to make sure that it's nice and snug in there. And you can see that it's already dripping there. Sometimes if it's not, you can put your finger in and sort of create a little bit of suction to get it out. And next, I'm going to hang my bucket on this little hook and put my lid on. And that's how you tap a tree.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that with us, Serena. So we have the good fortune of having with us maple syrup producer extraordinaire. John McCammon. Hello, John. Hello, Nathan. Good to be here. My name is Sean. And we're in Waterloo. And I thought I would show you a jar of what beautiful maple syrup, sweet, delicious. Really, it's a gourmet food product that they're making in this forest. It is just a special treat to have. Here is a jar of sap, the maple syrup from. This is maple sap. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, looks like water. But I will tell you, if you stick your finger in here and you taste this stuff, it also tastes like water. It is very watery. You have to kind of concentrate to taste sugar in there. And how do you make something sweet and delicious and 66% sugar out of something that is 98% water? It's only 2% sugar in here, maybe 1%. Out of something watery. If you are thinking add sugar, that is like table syrup or pancake syrup, and there's like potassium in there. And so if you want the good stuff, and if you can't add sugar to make it sweet, how do you make it? Well, the trick here is that you have to remove the water from the sap. And when they show you their evaporator here in a little bit, you're going to see steam coming out of the water leaving the sap. And so the only thing you have to do to make maple syrup is remove the water from sap. The problem here is that it takes you 40 jars of sap to make 1 jar of syrup. So if you have 40 jars of sap, you need to boil away 39 jars of water. The sugar doesn't evaporate. All the sugar from 40 jars of sap goes into 1 jar of syrup, and that's why it tastes so sweet. But because it takes so much work to make this stuff, you know, it's pretty expensive, it's pretty valuable. But once you've tasted it, it's hard to go back to the other stuff, to the pancake stuff. But yeah, sweet stuff.
That's great, Sean. Now, we had some questions submitted ahead of time by students on the Google form on our event page. And I've got some questions here from kindergarten students, distance learners in Mrs. Jamal and Mrs. Gamma's class. Now, I know these kids because I did a virtual field trip with them earlier this week. And Adam in this class wants to know, why does maple syrup only come from the maple tree?
Good question. So all trees have sap in it. Every single tree has sap in it. The sugar maple tree is really the one we like. It's got 3 things going for it. One, if you put a hole into the tree, sap comes out the hole. So for a lot of trees, if you stick a hole in a beech tree or an oak tree, nothing comes out the hole. And so we don't know what oak syrup tastes like. The sap out of the tree. This tree also has 2% sugar in the sap, which does not sound like much, but that's high for. And so you can make syrup from like a beech tree, or not a beech tree, a birch tree, but it takes you like over 100 jars of sap to make 1 jar of birch syrup. Birch syrup is good, but it's more work than from a sugar maple. And the other thing that sugar maples have going for them is that the syrup that we make from them is delicious. You know, you can make syrup from a walnut tree, I've tasted that and it's sweet, but it kind of has a medicine-y taste to it. And so this stuff, sap comes out, a lot of sugar in it, tastes delicious. So that's what this tree has going for it.
Awesome, Sean. So also in Mrs. Jamal's kindergarten class, Farron wants to know, how does the sap come out of the tree?
How does the sap come out of the tree? Good question. So there's sap in the tree all the time, but in the wintertime, that sap is frozen. As the temperatures warm up, the sap melts, and then pressure builds up in the tree on a warm day and pushes sap out any holes you put in the tree. And so when we have a nice warm day after a cold night, sap starts dripping out. If the temperature stays above zero, then the pressure goes down in the tree and nothing comes out of the hole. So we really need the temperature to go below zero, above zero, below zero, above zero. And that really gets the sap flowing. And you only get those temperatures for maybe 4 or 5 weeks in the spring. And so the time that you can make maple syrup is quite short. And so, it's a special time when, the land is just kind of waking up. This is like the first food. If you're trying to get food from a forest, good luck out here. But if you can tap a tree, that's calories coming out of a tree. And this was important for a lot of people who live in this area down through history.
Wonderful. We've got another question from the student Jawad in Madame Ball's distance learning class. And he wants to know, how long does it take for a tree to produce syrup if it's growing from a seedling?
Yeah, you just planted, a seed in the ground in your backyard, not surrounded by a whole bunch of other trees. You probably have to wait about 40 years until you can tap that tree. Your tree needs to be about as wide as a ruler before you can put a hole in it. Otherwise, the tree is too thin, too much of, the sugar in the tree is food for this tree to grow. And it's food for this tree to grow leaves. And so if you have a skinny tree and you take too much sap out, you can hurt that tree. So in your backyard, like 40 years, in a forest like this, where these big trees hog the sunlight, it might take 60 or 70 years for a tree to get big enough to be able to tap.
Now, looking up at the canopy, I see that there are no leaves on the tree at this time of year. So how do you know which ones are the maple trees?
Well, we're looking for a few things. If we had leaves on the trees, yeah, that'd be easy. But you're kind of stuck looking at bark. And the bark on a maple tree is rough. There's no pattern to the bark. As these sugar maples get older, you see bark start to lift up the tree sideways. And I'm looking for these handles on the tree here. You shouldn't pick the bark off a sugar maple tree. That's kind of what we're looking for. And in a sugar bush like this, you probably only have 8 or 9 different types of trees growing in here. And so you kind of figure out what the different trees look like. And this is the one. This is a beautiful, healthy sugar maple tree. And I'm looking forward to tasting some of the syrup they made here.
Absolutely. Man, this is really easy watching you talk all about maple trees.
Hey, Garrison and Nathan, get to work.
Oh, yeah, I guess maybe we should start carrying sap or helping out, right?
Better.
All right. I'll get a bucket. I guess I can carry some of this sap. You want to grab this bucket? That's a good idea. We got to haul all this sap all the way up to the evaporator, and it doesn't magically fly there. So we're going to have to take these big buckets and very carefully, we want to collect the stuff that's in this bucket here, put it in here, and then we can walk with it. So we have to gently lift up the lid that's been holding the rainwater out. We take our bucket off. We fill up our other bucket, making sure that we get every last drop because we know how sap it takes to make maple syrup. We put that bucket back on. We thank the maple tree. Thank you, maple tree. And then Nathan and I can start the long walk. Wonderful. Hey, Garrison, grade 5 student Elliot in Miss Rudd's class at King Edward wants to know how many trees are tapped here at the White Owl Sugarbush. Oh, that's a good question. We originally started off with not a lot. This year we have about 120 trees tapped. That's a lot of sap. That is a lot of sap. And we have to collect every single tree by hand. Now, does the tap run every day? Not every day. Most days, this time of year, we do get tap running. but it has to be a warm day and a cool night. And right now we've been having warm days and warm nights. And so the sap is starting to slow down for us. So does that mean the season's almost over? We're getting pretty close. Oh wow, this is really cool. What is this?
Hey guys.
Hey Dave. Hey Dave. This is our evaporator.
We're steaming off the water so that we get sap. At school, what do you say about steam and water?
Oh yeah, at the Sugarbush, when we do a field trip program, whenever we see steam, we want students to remember that steam is a sign that we're getting rid of water and we are on our way to getting maple syrup. So we like to say, see you later, water.
See you later, water.
Hello, sugar.
Hello, sugar.
And if you're watching in your classroom or if you're watching at home, you can say that anytime you see steam today. So can we put some of this sap in?
Yeah, we're putting sap at this end. So go ahead and add it.
When I put it in, it looks like some of the sap is moving.
Yeah. So what's happening here is on the bottom of these little shelves here, there's holes. There's a hole right here. There's a hole there. Hole here. Hole there. So as the sap begins, the steam comes off of the sap, and there's a higher sugar content, starts moving holes down to this whole system. And as it moves down through the system, it gets hotter and hotter, and more steam, more water evaporates, and it goes boiling here and coming through this way all the way down to here, where you can see the different colors. So up at the front, it's very light. Come down, it gets darker, darker, darker. And here is like the most intense sweetness in this pan. So this is very, it's not syrup yet, but it's very intense sweet, almost maple syrup.
Now, Dave, I see that there's obviously a lot going on to make all this steam. So what's heating this?
So what we have right here, this is a fire that we have to keep going all day long. It gets really, really hot. So we're using this. This is this wood actually was diseased, and a farmer down the road was getting rid of it because it was all diseased. So this is diseased wood that we're using, and then this is this kind of brick here, which is fire brick, which is kind of really holds a lot of heat. We have the fire at this end, and then the heat is being sent out. As it goes out, it heats up these fire bricks all the way along. So we have a consistent heat that travels through and keeps the steam coming off.
Now, Dave, I'm visiting with Sean not that long ago. He was talking about maple syrup being full of 66% sugar.
Yeah.
And you know, I've seen people use fancy tools to measure that sugar, but how do you do it here in the Sugarbush?
Well, we can't actually say that our maple syrup is 66% sugar. We don't. For us, we do it in somewhat of a traditional way, which is we go by texture. So when we're close to sap, we start feeling it and seeing what the texture is like, and then we start tasting it for the dogs. And then also just by the look, because you can start seeing the color change into a beautiful, right now into a auburn kind of reddish brown color.
Now, Dave, is it maple syrup here, or do you have to do something with it to get to maple syrup?
Yeah, so this is close to maple syrup, but it's not quite maple syrup. And what we do, what we call finish the maple syrup off, like to kind of bring it to a syrup, is we use another pan right here. This is what we call our finisher pan. And so that tap there, we open that tap and we put, what we try to do is put these two sections here into this pan. And then we boil it using gas so we can control the heat a little bit better.
So this system seems really efficient. How long, using this evaporator setup, how long does it take to go from sap to maple syrup?
So we typically boil for, on a typical day, we're out here boiling for about 8 hours. It takes about an hour to get the fire going, and then we boil for 8 hours, and then it takes maybe about an hour and a half to get it from the finishing pan to syrup. So an average day is 8 to 9 hours, but we have had some 12, 13-hour days.
Now we have a question, and I don't know, maybe Sean can help us answer this question. Both Parsa and Neil, who are distance kindergarten learners, they want to know, how does the water that has sugar inside turn the maple syrup color, and how does
Syrup comes in a few different colors. So we've got a light color here that's called golden syrup. We've got this one, which is called amber, and this one here, which is called dark. And as the tree sucks up water out of the ground, it brings up some of the minerals that are in the ground. And that's actually what gives maple syrup its flavor. And so light maple syrup has a little bit of maple flavor. Darker maple syrup has a lot of maple flavor. They're all the same sweetness. And the darker stuff has a heavier maple flavor. And as the ground thaws out, the tree is going to suck up more minerals out of the ground. And so as your season goes on, as the ground thaws out, your syrup is going to get darker and darker. Also, the amount of sugar that's in the sap drops as the season goes along. And so maybe at the start of the season, minerals in your syrup. And also, the longer you boil it, you're caramelizing the sugar a little bit, and so it turns darker as well. So when there's a lot of sugar in the sap, you make it, and when there's not as much sugar, things get a little bit darker for you. So this is some syrup I made at home, and this stuff is getting a little bit dark. I think maybe we're getting towards the end of the season.
Thanks, Sean. So I was wondering, this is a pretty amazing setup. Has maple syrup always been made this way?
I don't think it has. Why don't we follow Dave? I think Dave has something to show us here.
Yeah, as you see over here, this big iron kettle. I would think that my ancestors, the Métis ancestors, and when early settlers came to Canada, this would have been a trade item. And so the First Nations would have boiled with these metal pots. At one point, I was just reading recently in Manitoulin Island in about 1860, the First Nations on Manitoulin Island boiled 500 tons of maple sugar. So not sap, they had to boil it even further down to sugar. And they produced 500 tons that were traded and sent to Europe from one island. And so this is a bit of a longer process because as you can see, or as you saw earlier, the pan is long and narrow. So the heat hits right across the whole pan and steams all the way through. This is kind of round, and the sap is condensed into the pot. So you got to boil down down this way. So it takes a lot longer to get to a syrup stage.
And Dave, if I was doing this in my backyard and I went and got another bucket because I saw the sap level was getting low and I poured new sap in there, is that going to take longer now to make maple syrup?
Yeah, like every time you add a bucket, you're basically adding more water, sap, and therefore more water into the pot. And so it takes a lot. You have to boil off that water as well. So it makes it, it takes time. But that's kind of what we do here. We're continually adding buckets here and buckets there.
That's awesome, Dave. Now, I also know some other really good traditional ways that we used to make maple syrup. And one of the ways that we had is we would take birch bark baskets. And I have a small one here I'm just going to show you. And so this is a small example of a birch bark basket. And baskets would be used for collecting the sap, but they would also be used to boil the sap. And how, you must be wondering, how do we put this on the fire and then have a fire? Well, that would actually catch the birch on fire. So we don't do that. But what we do have to do is we will fill that up with sap, and then we take really, really hot rocks. and we would put hot rocks that had been heated in the fire into the sap, and they will boil the sap from inside the container. Now, this is a really small birch bark basket. So I have another tool here that I'm going to use to show you exactly what I'm talking about. So I do have a little bit of a tin container here. We have some sap inside, if you can kind of see in there. And I also have put a granite rock inside of this fire. And I'm going to use 2 sticks here to pull this granite rock out. And what we're going to see is we're going to see something very similar to what's happening in the pot here already and what was happening in the evaporator. We want that water to disappear. And so this rock's going to help. So I'm going to reach in here and I'm going to pull out this rock. And I want you to see what's going to happen here when I dunk this rock into. You can kind of hear it, right? We're starting to see bubbles. That's a good sign that what's happening in there is that sap is starting to boil. It sounds kind of like if you have a kettle on at home. You hear that bubbling happening before the steam arrives. And what we do is then we take out that rock again, we put another one into the pot, and we can boil it that way. Another way that many indigenous people in this territory would have made maple syrup is they would put it into the fire. And so they would be filled with sap, they would sit in the fire, coals would be brought around boiling. We also did have copper pots as well that we would use, very similar to how we were using this cast iron pot. Thanks for showing us this, Dave.
Yeah, my pleasure.
This is super awesome. So here's an we got a sort of like a pioneer era style spile there. Yeah. This is a really good example here. So we have originally many of the people in this territory would have used a split cedar spile. And so you would cut a slit into the tree, and then you'd take a long, narrow piece of cedar, and you would put that piece of cedar into the tree and allow the sap to run out of that little cut down the cedar and into the birch bark basket. An example of an early pioneer kind of spile is this carved wood spile. You can see there's a hole right in there, and that hole comes out on this side. And so we would have drilled a hole into the tree, not as small as the one that Serena had been drilling earlier, a little bit bigger than that. And we would put that into the tree, and then our sap would drip off into this bucket. Now, you're very lucky that you're in your classroom today, because this is the work that would have been done by kids. And they would have had to walk all through the bush carrying all of these buckets, and you would have been exhausted. So you're lucky that you got skipped out of this today. Fantastic. So let's take a look at, catch up with Serena over here. She's hard at work by the fire.
Yeah. I am over here making us a little snack. Something that you might have seen before, something that you might have not seen before, but this is called bannock. So bannock is a fry bread that you can cook on the fire like this, or in a pan on your oven at home. You could bake it as well. There are many different ways that you could make bannock.
That smells really good, Serena.
Thank you.
So what goes into it?
So what I put into my recipe is I just do flour, baking. Now I know that varies depending on where you live, where you're taught from. Those are definitely some staples that are in the bannock recipes from around the world.
Now, is this something that, I'm sure lots of the people watching right now may have been camping before. Is this something that they could try?
Yes, this is definitely something that they could try. And actually, what I'm doing here is probably the best method for when you're camping or going on a hike to make bannock with. And so that you don't have to carry a heavy pan like I'm using here. So what I have here is I have a stick that I sharpened a little bit at the end. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna wrap my bannock dough around the end of my stick like this, so that it can be cooked over the fire. And I'm actually going to pass this to my friend Nicole to hold over the fire.
Thank you. We're so glad to have you with us today, Nicole. I'm wondering if you can introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your role.
Oh, sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Nicole Robinson. I'm the Equity and Inclusion Officer with an Indigenous focus here at the WRDSB. And I'm also a member of the Oneida Nation of the Thames First Nation. And I'm really happy to be here today with everybody, with the whole crew. This is way better than sitting at home. I'll tell you that. Yeah, so I've been in my role for 13 years, but we've never ever done this before. So this is quite amazing.
It's really nice to be out on the land.
It sure is.
So, teachers and students looking for information about the resource Indigenous curriculum, they can talk to you.
Yes, actually, any teacher in our board or any staff member can request Indigenous education support through our support form, which I have the rest of my team is moderating, so I'm sure that somebody could throw that link for staff into the chat. And yeah, you can get in touch with our team to discuss anything education related for Indigenous education.
Wonderful. Thank you for being here, Nicole.
Thank you.
And thank you again to the Indigenous Learning Team for moderating. So I have a question here for Serena from a student in Miss Reed's class, which is a distance learning grade 7 class. And this student wants to know, can maple syrup be used as medicine?
Yes, maple syrup can be used as medicine. In fact, both of the forms that maple syrup come in, that you saw today, sweet water and syrup, can be used as medicine. Now, most of the really healthy properties that are in the kind of syrup process are still within sweet water, because when we cook them off, a lot of the nutrients are lost. So what you get from sweet water is a bunch of really important minerals that your body was lacking in the wintertime. So in the spring, when the sap starts to run, you get lots of good things like calcium and magnesium and potassium. It helps your body digest things, and it's very hydrating because of the huge water content in all of the sap that the trees give to us. And then when you cook it into maple syrup, you get not only a really tasty treat, but it's also it feeds the soul, because maple syrup is it's a very spiritual process for a lot of Indigenous people that kind of symbolizes renewal and new life in the springtime.
Fantastic. Yeah, there's something special about being out here at this time of year when all the snow's melting, or today all the snow has melted. But when I first learned how to make maple syrup, I was surprised by how much work it is to carry sap every day.
Yes, it is a lot of work. And there's actually an important story that I'd like to share with you today, because making maple syrup actually wasn't this easy. There are stories of way back when the world was first created, that maple trees in this region just had straight maple syrup running from their branches and from their trunks. And this was a gift given to the people living in this region from Creator. Now, one day, a friend of Creator named Nanabush came down to visit the people in this area to see how they were doing with all the maple syrup and all of the other things that they were doing. And when he came down here, he found that he couldn't find the people anywhere. Nobody was tending the fields. Nobody was kind of trapping or doing crafts or anything like that. And so he went on a search for all of these people. And where he found them was laying in a maple grove with their mouths open as straight maple syrup dripped into their mouths. And immediately Nanabush said, "This is not good. We don't want our people to become lazy or have too much sugar in their bodies." And so Nanabush took some birch baskets, just like Garrison showed you earlier, and he went to the nearest river and collected a bunch of water and began to pour them into the tops of all of the maple trees to dilute the maple syrup into sweet water. Now, This wasn't to make it so that it was just water, but just so that it had that little bit of a sweetness and still important minerals that you need after the winter. And Nanabush came back and he said, this is to remind you that hard work is needed in order to the gifts that the Creator has put on the earth for you. And so we tell this story around the fire like this during the maple season to remember that maple syrup is a gift that Creator has given to us, and to extend that to all other things of creation.
Thank you so much for sharing that with our viewers, Serena. So we want to make sure we take the opportunity to invite our hosts to answer questions that were submitted ahead of time, or if you have a question that you want to put in the chat right now so that we can answer it live for you. We're going to invite Garrison and Dave over here, and System Administrator Bell is going to ask some questions that have been put in the chat, and we'll see. We'll test the knowledge here of our hosts.
Well, hello everyone. So we have a question from Distance Learning, grade 7, and it's being asked by Mahalo, and also some students have asked it on our live chat. And the question is, I would like to know if any animals eat maple syrup.
Yes, they do. There's an old story that's told about how maple syrup was originally found in the trees by a child shooting an arrow into the tree and then sap coming out and a squirrel coming and eating it. And we think that that's a very true story, because we put a tap just over here on a tree earlier this year, and we were sitting here waiting for the fire to go. And as we looked over, the squirrel was following a little bit of a drip up and down the tree, eating for like 20 minutes. And so, yes, maple, especially squirrels, we've seen, love maple syrup, maple sap.
If you look in your parks and you see in the springtime where a branch might have been broken off, you can look and see if squirrels or chipmunks go and frequent that area and eat some of that sap that's coming out as well, because they're just as much interested in that sweet goodness and the minerals that come from that as we are, because they also haven't been eating a lot over the winter as well.
Thank you for those answers. We have a great question from Ada. King Edward, Miss Root's class, is actually about climate change. How has climate change affected sugar maple trees?
It's been a very, very warm season, and we haven't had a lot of sap running because remember, we need those warm days and those cold nights. And when the climate is changing, or it's irregular or warmer temperatures, we're not getting the temperatures we need for perfect sap seasons. The other thing that's happening too is as pollution is put out in the air, that has impacts on the growth of our plants that are in the bush here. We see, especially near the road, we see a lot of pollution marks that are showing up on the leaves of plants. So some of the things that we can do is we really look after the sugar bush. So we come out and we monitor the sugar bush. We make sure we remove any diseased trees. We also plant new trees. We make sure that people are reducing the impact as much as possible on this area. We also have a salamander here that we look after. So we're doing some really good work at creating and looking after the biodiversity in this forest, which also helps the sugar maples.
And if I could say one thing, if more people tapped trees, we would protect more forests and more trees. Once people begin to like, from our perspective as Indigenous people, we see ourselves in relationship with this forest and with the trees within this forest. Often non-Indigenous people, they don't see that relationship, but it's once you engage within that relationship by saying putting one tap in a maple tree in your backyard and boiling that off, you become connected to that tree, in relationship with that tree. And then when somebody says, let's cut that down, you're going to say, no way. I have a relationship with this tree. This tree's significant.
You know, Dave, I know that a lot of students in our school board are concerned about the environment and very interested in finding ways to help protect the earth. So, we already heard Serena say that there's vitamins and that maple syrup is healthy. Are you also telling us that eating real maple syrup is good for the environment?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Nature, Nate. Yeah, because because I think like the more we engage in relationship, and so we believe the maple tree is offering us a gift, and we can take advantage, not in a bad way, but in a reciprocal way, to harvest that gift, to take some of that gift, and treat ourselves and create relationship with the tree.
That's got to be one of the sweetest ways to protect the environment I've ever heard of.
You said it.
We have one final question for our panel from the questions submitted in some of the chat, but I do want to thank Dave and Garrison for that answer and for that reminder and for the lesson to really connect with our environment, our land, and to be thoughtful about our food and for where it's coming from. So our final question is coming from Bobby Joe, an online learner, Westmount Public School, Madame Ball, and is asking the question, did maple syrup making originate from the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, or neutral people?
All the above. So this area, like a vast area, actually in the northeast of what is the United States and Canada, indigenous people harvested maple syrup or harvested maple sap, and at that time they cooked it down to sugar because it was easier to carry and preserve and that kind of thing. But it was something that right across this region, all indigenous people took part in, and it was a part, like even as Serena said, it was really a part of our culture and traditions that to come out and celebrate after a hard winter, often locked away, and depending on which community it came from, some coming from longhouses, some coming from smaller housing situations, and cold winters, and then coming out of smoke-filled rooms and that kind of thing, and then they could kind of cleanse themselves through maple syrup and have festivals and share with each other and have celebration. So that happened anywhere for maple trees.
Wonderful. Well, I just want to express my gratitude for White Owl Native Ancestry hosting us here for this event, and I know that many of our viewers, are also really appreciative. I'm wondering if we could take an opportunity to learn maybe some language to be able to say thank you properly, and we have to ask a few of our leaders here because there's lots of different ways we can say it.
Yeah, I'll start off. So in Anishinaabe Moan, you say mi gwech.
Miigwech. And in Métis we say Marcy.
Marcy.
And in Oneida, we say Yoko.
Yoko.
Wonderful. Well, Nyauko, Miigwech, Marcy for having us here. Well, it wouldn't be an outdoor ed live stream if we didn't have a song with the great Sean McDermott.
Woo! Thank you. I am looking, I have to sing this song, but I'm staring at this bannock here. I've tried making bannock before, and I've never had it come out like that. It looks amazing. So, I mean, I've made maple syrup for a long time, and I know there's a lot of work in it. And I've written a whole bunch of songs about making maple syrup, and this is a song about how much work is in it. Before I start singing, though, we just want to thank, again, Garrison and Dave and Serena for having us out here. We need to thank Levi and Joe, David behind the camera looking after the technical stuff. And thank you to the Indigenous team on the chat. And Al Woodhouse hanging out. And thank you. Thank you for tuning into our live stream here. And we'll let you know when the next one is, because we like doing these and we hope you enjoy them too. Drip, drip, the days are warm, the nights are cold. Drip, drip, I'm dreaming about a liquid gold. Drip, drip, it's fun to make her, so I'm told. Drip, drip, sound just like a falling rain. Drip, drip, tapping on a window pane. Drip, drip, I'll never be the same again. Drip, drip, the dripping seems to go so slow. Drip, drip, the buckets start to overflow. Drip, drip, I emptied them 6 hours ago. Drip, 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 all the work it never ends. Drip, drip, soon I'll need an ambulance. Drip, drip, where the heck are all my friends? Drip, 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 the temperature is going down. Drip, drip, the stream of sap is slowing down. Drip, drip, I don't think I will miss the sound. Drip, drip, now I'm lying in my bed. Drip, drip, I hear the sound, it's in my head. Drip, drip, I'll hear it till the day I'm dead. Drip, 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 drip. Miigwech.
Now let's try some of this bannock.
Good timing.
Can we try it with maple syrup?
Oh yeah, got a bottle right here.
Can our viewers at home taste it too?
Well, I just put the recipe in the chat.
Oh,
so-
great.
Yeah.
I bet our viewers are good at using their imagination.
You want to try it, Dave?
Oh, well, for sure.
Can you go to the screen now? Just keep the audio on.
Don't waste the liquid gold.
That is so good.
Logos. When are you gonna? I can do it anytime. Yeah, I'll just start it now.
Oh yeah, I can't wait.